It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting if you just email me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. I'm really excited about our guest today, fascinating guy, Adam Fishman. He's over there in Thailand, and he used to work for RFK Jr. on this most recent campaign, and he contacted me. He heard the interview with Christine Kramer, who also worked for the campaign. They did that Wall Street Journal article about her. So, Adam Fishman, are you there?
Yeah, Ed, hi. Thank you for having me.
No, man, thank you so much. Explain to the audience, who is Adam Fishman?
Well, I'm a Jewish son of an immigrant who grew up in New England and then on the East Coast moved to Oregon. My father was an entrepreneur in the garment industry, had factories in Fall River, New Jersey. We lived in New Bedford and North Dartmouth and moved around quite a bit. And I got attracted to politics at an early age of what it was to be a citizen. So I'm a citizen, and I've become an activist and helped many candidates to try to help them be successful in their elections.
And we've been talking off there for quite a bit. And you're also involved in the symphony.
Yeah, well, Ed, that was when I first realized, I grew up and I loved music. My dad was a musician, so I became a music teacher and moved out west from the East Coast, moved to Montana, then Oregon. Wow. And I was, running small school orchestras and in that process of being, the conservatory graduate. I went to Hart College of Music in West Hartford, Connecticut, and had studied with many great musicians. And I had been around great music. And then you go out and you start your career. And I started in the music industry, music teaching, and was a symphony orchestra director for an entire school district in Klamath Falls, Oregon. And in that capacity, instantly, one of the first people that came up to shake my hand at one of my concerts was a gentleman who ran for county commissioner in Oregon at that time, Roger Hamilton, and he said, Adam, it's so nice to meet someone with class in Klamath Falls. And then as in that position, I then was looking to see how I wanted to advance my career. And I started helping the Oregon Symphony on their tour to Klamath Falls, met the John Graham, who was the Oregon Symphony manager, and my best friend one of my good friends at Hart School of Music went into music management, and he was in the program, which is to train the next future generation of symphony managers. And he was in the third class. And they had all said, Adam, you should apply for this program. And so from Klamath Falls, Oregon, I went all the way to Avery Fisher Hall, was interviewed by 3 symphony managers from the Philadelphia Orchestra and all these great organizations. And I was chosen. And they asked me, where did I want to go on this national fellowship? And I said, I'd like to be in Boston in the summer, Hawaii in the winter, and Oregon in the spring. And so they gave me Boston. So I arrived, and it's run out of Washington D.C. It's now called the League of America's Orchestras, but it's to train individuals to be the CEO of an orchestra. And that was a very important thing where I could see the convergence between fine art and orchestras and politics.
So how did you get involved in politics?
Well, I think when you are surrounded by politicians that want to be associated with the fine arts, you get to meet them and know them, just like I got to know John Williams, the famous conductor of the Boston Pops, the great composer of all the Steven Spielberg movies. I was always being touched by politicians. And I remember on one of the flights, an elderly gentleman, I was young at the time, he said, "You're going to be involved in politics." And I said, "Why do you say that?" He says, "You just will." So I had, been concentrating. I started one of the world's first shopping cart technology companies online before PayPal, and I was competing with the early Amazon and all of these things. And so I had my head in the ground in that. After being a concert promoter, I went from symphony orchestra management to being an independent concert promoter, impresario. And I did that in Oregon and the Northwest for about 5 years, was fairly successful, but reached a ceiling which I couldn't break. And so I was just focused on the internet, discovered the internet even before I started my symphony career, was using computers and technology, and I advanced my skills in that area. So politics happened because for me, for the presidential politics, it wasn't until Bernie Sanders announced that he was running in 2015. So that got my attention.
And what did you wind up doing for the Sanders campaign?
Well, we had the strongest. I'm from the town of Eugene, Oregon. That's where my residency is, and we were all about Bernie. We were the strongest progressive, if you want to call it progressive, or as I was recently quoted in a Spaces with supporters for Trump. He's a socialist. Well, he was a democratic socialist, but he's an independent. And his main mantras were end the corruption in government and the money controlling politics and government. And that, as I know and I've studied, is one of the great problems in our representative government. So I was all behind Bernie. I ran to be a delegate for him in the state of Oregon. I didn't win because I came into the understanding of the political party, because up to the time of I was affiliated with the Democratic Party. But it wasn't until Bernie Sanders, and then I found out, you can actually be elected as a member of the party. I had not understood the political party organizations. When I went to Boston, and this is what happened at Boston, Tom Morris, the general manager of the Boston Symphony, he said one of the things he wanted me to do was spend time in the business office. And he said, just follow the money for a couple of weeks. That's how he started at the Boston Symphony. because he says you'll know the business once you follow the money. So in Bernie Sanders' campaign, I started to follow the money. There was a story. I was not a supporter of Hillary Clinton, and we had a major fight, as everybody will know, for that nomination. And I decided to do investigation, just like research, just like anybody does. Research deeply into the money trail, and I came across a story about the Hillary Victory Fund. And Margot Kidder, Lois Lane, she published a story in Montana that got a lot of traction. And I got her on the phone, and eventually, and she said, just follow the FEC reports, Adam. It's all in the FEC reports. And I had not any knowledge of this. So I studied the FEC reports, and I'm very good with databases and technology and making reports. I helped solve a 20-year problem for the Boston Symphony. That was my first project that Tom had given me, is to tell them how many records they've sold. The Boston Symphony, great recording orchestra, never knew how many records they sold.
Wow.
And so I had the skills and ability to do that. And from that, back in that day, Tom brought me to the board of the Boston Symphony with my report, just the top page. You know, being a young guy, I did everything, graphs of how much they sold this record in this country and how much in that country. But they had John Williams as the Boston Pops conductor at that time after Arthur Fiedler died. And my detailed research and reports showed that the most records they sold was a Boston Pops album. And so they negotiated a recording contract with John Williams called Pops in Space that became the largest classical recording history. So when you do the research and you follow the money and you get the correct data, it's not just someone's opinion, it's based upon real information. So that's when I did the deep dive into both the Democratic Party of Oregon, my local Democratic Lane County Party, understanding the party system, the central committees, and all the committees, all the way up to the DNC. And I saw the corruption that Hillary Clinton campaign had done with the Hillary Victory Fund, where the large donors would give $10,000 contributions to our Democratic Party in Oregon and then have all that money just go instantly to Hillary Clinton. And of course, she had stated she was going to be using it on down ballot campaigns. And of course, we all know the story of what happened in the Clinton campaign, of the collusion with the chairman of the DNC at the time, the giving of the questions before the debate, all of those things. I was just truly disgusted with how the party was run.
Oh yeah, they totally stole we had a caucus I was living in Nevada at the time, and the Clintons came in and just totally stole that whole. We actually won. We won originally, and then they had another vote and just kicked us out and said, "Hey, it win." You know, we could put everyone, and then they claimed we were throwing chairs and stuff. What a mess that was.
Yeah,
man.
I was following all of those stories, and because when I decide to study something, I don't just do it a little bit. I mean, I got all the way to the White House with the Boston Symphony. Mm-hmm. I was studying, I was learning these businesses, and but I was not trying to run as a politician. I was always helping. Yeah.
How did you get involved with the RFK? Because for me, there's quite a bit of difference in RFK and Bernie. I'm a socialist myself. And I had problems with RFK from the beginning with all the anti-vax stuff and the other. What made you be enamored with RFK Jr.?
Well, growing up in high school in New Jersey, I knew RFK. I was a river runner and a sailor, and my father was supposedly sailed with Jack Kennedy. I grew up in the Kennedy family, and it was interesting because in Philadelphia, a month before the convention, I was in front of Independence Hall there, Constitution Plaza. And with my nephew, he was graduating Temple University. And I just said, the clock struck high noon as we were walking through. And I knew in my mind Bernie was going to be crushed at the Democratic convention. I told I conversed with all of the delegates. I said, you're going into the lion's den. They are not going to treat you with respect. But I was in this moment with a very surreal moment where the thought, I said, if not Bernie, who will be able to change our government? And I said, and it came to my mind, Kennedy, Joe Kennedy, Robert Kennedy. So I had an intuition 4 years before that. So when I was in Thailand, and on April 19th, which is an important date for me, is when I did my first day as a concert promoter. It's a day that I launched Garth Brooks's career in Klamath Falls, Oregon, on his first tour. It was like a light bulb. So at that moment, I went into campaigning mode. Sent him a contribution, got involved with the Slack community, early Slack community, grassroots volunteers, trying to help out Mr. Kennedy. Now, I knew I couldn't help him on the ground. And so in the Slack community back in, I have to look at my calendar, I think it was in May, there was a gentleman who said, does anybody want to do telefunding?
May of what year?
Said, 2023.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So what got me into RFK Jr.'s campaign?
Yeah.
So I besides giving money, I wanted to help. I wanted to help in management. I wanted to help in any way that I could. And knowing that this was going, not at that time, but it was clear it became besides the event in Boston, which I didn't attend, I was in Thailand, and also recovering from a vaccine injury. So I am vaccine injured. And I had suffered tremendous health consequences from it, but not one doctor had ever considered that I was vaccine injured. So I didn't know this at the time that I was vaccine injured. I had the vaccines, no COVID, and then I got very sick in Thailand, had to return to the United States in 2021. And long story about my health, but I sent in a contribution, posted it on Facebook, and my sister says, he's an anti-vaxxer. And I'm like, what is she talking about? How is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. an anti-vaxxer? That made absolutely no sense to me because I had been removed from the vaccine controversy. I didn't have any children, so I never had to make that decision to vaccinate my children. If I had, I'm sure I would have been very concerned about the consequences of a, fully blown vaccine schedule. So I was in shock to hear that. And then, of course, when the stories came out that he announced his campaign, I checked all the news sources and everything was anti-vaxxer conspiracy theorist Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was the tagline on most of the stories. And I was dumbfounded. And then, of course, as I did my research on what is the anti-vax problem, I I came across the documentary movie on the real Anthony Fauci, and it was in that movie that I saw a vaccine injured person with my same results, what I'm dealing with. And so I'm like, oh, now I understand.
So it was actually Kennedy's position on vaccines that attracted you to him.
No, no. His position on that. No, I discovered my own vaccine injury from Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s The Real Anthony Fauci book.
Gotcha. So so you joined the campaign then, but my understanding is though you became disillusioned with the campaign.
Well, I joined the campaign. It was a long boarding process to get to be a Team Kennedy member. So I was calling the individual who was, and I also was waiting to see the first FEC reports from that first quarter. So mid-July, the FEC report, the first FEC report, which shows how well the finances are doing of the campaign, didn't come out until July 28th, but I had signed my non-disclosure agreement with the chairman, chief operating officer, Matt Sanders.
You didn't have like a referral to get in there? They just you went in there cold?
Yeah.
And they're giving you access to the to the stuff. How much money was coming in through the in that FCC disclosure?
Well, it's interesting, Ed, because, I watched Bernie's campaign too. When he first announced, I was like, okay, let's see how he does. Let's see how the money comes in to support him. And he had a good what they call the first quarter, but that's not in like year quarters. It's in the FEC quarters. And I was like, okay, Bernie, that's pretty good. And then as his momentum and the contributions continued to flood in for Bernie. So I had come in right after that. I was actually boarded and actually entered into the campaign on the phones on probably, let's see, took them almost, August 17th. So, let's see. Yeah, I had a couple of interviews. I had an interview with the new telefunding manager. I was first reached out by one person who was supposedly had started, which very interestingly, now with talking with Christine, realize more from what occurred from that April 19th announcement. So there were people showing up at that announcement that wanted to be involved in support Bobby's campaign.
Right.
So I know these people well now after studying them for 18 months. But so I was allowed to get on the phones, and I told the manager, just give me access to the dialer and let me get going. I know how to do this. I used to run telemarketing for my own company, Net Stores, because we were selling shopping cart services to companies all over the country, and I ran a telemarketing team, so I knew technology. I managed developers on servers. I'm an experienced professional. So, and I was coming in as a volunteer, interviewed, and I said, well, how are you pay your telefunders? And they said, yes, some of them make more than money than other people, a lot of people in the campaign. And I said, good. So that's where I'm looking to be. But he says, but you have to start as a volunteer. I said, no problem. That's how I started in the symphony business. Just volunteer your time, show up, do the work. Let them see how you do. So that's when I started, and I just started dialing the numbers. And then because the telephony manager was touting, well, Dennis Kucinich, if you had seen his interview, I think it was on Fox, and he was saying, wow, $1 billion a day came in, right? He was touting on all this. And then when I saw the FEC reports before I started, yes, they had 2 very good days, and they reached $6 million total for that quarter, I think. I'd have to look at the numbers again. But I said, and he was touting, yeah, we're doing better than this and that. And I said, no, Mark, okay. Well, by the time the September 30th happened, they were leveling off. They were not really getting a lot of financial support from donors. I mean, $6 billion every 3 months is, pretty good, but it's not like Bernie's numbers. It's not like an insurgent candidate.
Yeah, the Bernie mailing list was insane. Yeah, that thing was worth a fortune. Now, what about how the money was being spent, though? The money's coming in. $6 million comes in. How's it going out?
Well, that was the interesting thing. Well, let's see who the talent is. Because you have to have talent in a campaign, right? And I was surprised at how much certain people were getting paid compared to the amount of income that the projected income that the campaign could bring in. So there were many people that I had never heard of, really. Charles Eisenstein, Del Bigtree, because I was not focused on vax or anti-vax. I never had even brought that into my mind. I did take the vaccine, and then I did get injured from it. But it was not something that I had been focused on, that some people had in the movement of the vax and anti-vax movement in the United States, or bottle autonomy. But I had a chance to then review the reports and see these people on a virtual campaign. It was pretty much a virtual campaign. Are you aware of that?
No, I what did you say? I missed it. Virtual campaign?
Team Kennedy was a virtual campaign.
Entirely?
For the most part. They did hire, there were rallies or meet and greets and fundraising events. So those were where the candidate would show up and speak. But those were the only outside things at that time. And Dennis had run his own campaigns and had been involved, but when I saw the amount of salary that him and his company was getting, I'm going, that's a lot. That's a lot. And then I saw like 10 other people receiving that same remuneration. I said, that's a lot, and that is not sustainable. These were things. So if you take a look at RFK Jr.'s campaign, they had to build their own publishing arm because they were not getting any good press. And so they, somewhere in the campaign, whether it was Del Bigtree or others who had run his own show and, podcasts, run his own show on YouTube and on his website, of someone who I did not know, they just built a huge video editing and publishing arm to create their own image of Mr. Kennedy. In the symphony business, we would always, when working with public relations in the press, I worked with Gene Shalit on one of the greatest concerts in the Boston Symphony's history at Tanglewood, where, you have to say certain things to them, and hopefully they will project a good image for the symphony. In Boston's case, it was easy. But in RFK Jr.'s case, it was not. There was nothing but negative press about him. So they had to create their own press division.
And wasn't his social media manager like 19 years old?
Okay, that individual social media manager, I've tried to discover to whom there is a gentleman who was in the campaign that I had communicated with because of some of the anomalies that I had discovered in the campaign software that needed to be fixed. He was quite young. Mm-hmm. And that individual was, I think, reports 19 years old, and he was making a lot of money, but it was his first job. These were salaries that were over and above to what these people produced. You know, when you run an organization, a long-term organizations, in the symphony business, it's not like a private company, although a campaign company is a company, and it has to deal with budgets and how much they got. But I think out of the gate, they thought that the money was just going to go up and up and up. And they were giving huge compensation to people without even knowing what they were going to actually accomplish. And that I saw happen. But I was doing phone calling, and I could track how many calls I made and how many people I spoke to and how much money I was able to raise from Robert F. Kennedy Jr. supporters. And I will tell you, it was really fun to do for me because, when you believe in a candidate and you can express that to a supporter, it's quite easy to ask them to give a little more. And they did. And especially to have an opportunity to be at a fundraising event with Mr. Kennedy. That was very easy to, so to speak, sell to a supporter. And I was very good at it.
Well, what do you think the motive was? Do you think the motive was just to, hey, let's all make a lot of money doing this? Let's see how much money you can raise and just enjoy the money and enjoy. Because I saw a campaign where I forget his name, the doctor who ran against Trump, the black fellow. Right. Anyway. Catered. His events were catered, with a 5-star restaurant.
So were Bobby's. Listen, I promoted B.B.
Ben
King.
Carson, Dr. Ben Carson.
Yeah, Dr. Ben Carson. Yeah. So the grift. Is what, and it was one of the things that when I entered a question I wanted to answer for myself. I knew Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as an environmental lawyer. I saw him clean up the Hudson. I saw him clean up the Mawa tribe up in northern Jersey, right where I went to summer jazz workshop with some of the great musicians that played with Chuck Mangione and Toots Thielemans and all these great musicians. I saw Bobby work on that. So I knew him for cleaning up the Hudson and the waterways, and I'm a river runner, and I believe in the environment. So I knew nothing of RFK Jr.'s stance of supporting the safety of vaccines.
Well, let me ask you this. I sent you a picture. I believe I sent you that photograph of Kennedy with Roger Stone and Michael Flynn.
Yeah.
Right, and we said, hey, when did that picture come out? It was like 2018, 2019, right?
Okay.
And those are certainly are two fellows that know how to raise money and profit off of politics. Okay.
Roger Stone?
And Flynn too. Flynn's raking it in all over the place, man. America First PAC. I think he's making $370,000 a year on just that one alone. You know?
So this was one of the things that I wanted to know is, when I was in the symphony business and the arts management business, you wanted to know what people's motivations
Right.
are. Are they really out to help America, or are they really out to make a job for themselves? And Bobby never gave any money to the campaign. He could give unlimited funds, but I think Cheryl said if you use any of the money, she'll divorce you. She will divorce him. And so he never put in any money in the campaign, although any candidate is allowed to give unlimited funds. So, that was one of the burning questions. Is this a vanity campaign? Or is this truly for a man who wants to help change America? And I believe he still wants to help America, but I don't think he was involved in the management of his campaign.
What about these stories, sexual harassment, people having to hire security guards, all of that stuff? Did you witness any of that?
Well, I other than what the news reports or, political articles or anything. But I followed them all. I would say that, but I do know how that I was harassed and intimidated in the campaign.
Oh, really?
And the psychology and the culture of the campaign was extremely chaotic, where nobody knew where they stood. So in my case, I was never offered a paid position, which I was working night and day on making phone calls for 3 months and raised almost, I put it this way. I called up the chairman, the chief operating officer of the campaign, and let him know, because there was concern because I was overseas that a foreign actor could get access to the data. Bobby's list.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Which you and I know is ridiculous because the NSA captures everything. There's nothing that goes through these airwaves or electronically that is not stored in a server somewhere, most likely in Microsoft servers in Texas. We don't know that. We all know that all the data from any conversation, emails for both U.S. citizens and non-U.S. citizens, is stored and collected. So I thought it was a ridiculous claim. When on my computer, I'm seeing the information. So I called this chief operating officer and said, listen, I've run a secure shopping cart company for 25 years. I have my own facility, secure facility. I'll set up a computer in there and I'll VPN in, and so that no data will cross anything through the internet. And he was listening. And I said to him, Matt, Matt had never run a campaign. He had never been involved in politics and running the management of an organization like this. And I said to him, Matt, you have to loosen up a little bit. This is like a symphony business. You have concert goers that want to see the symphony. You have supporters that financially contribute. You have the volunteers that help with all kinds of things. You have the star of the show, the conductor, the god. You have the managers. And every single manager and artist I work with always was listed on the program book as a major financial contributor, even though they were making hundreds of thousands of dollars in salary. And he went, And that was my conversation with him. He did finally come through and give a maximum contribution about a month later on December 21st. And I then sent him a personal thank you card, just as the Kennedys had sent me a personal thank you card when I was in Boston. Thank you so much for taking good care of us. We'll know you do good things. So I saw that this hiring and compensation was being monitored in a very obscure manner. They had spent money on things like, when Bobby went independent, which I had told my manager, I said, I think he should try to get the Libertarian nomination. I said, the Democratic Party is not going to allow him an inch. And
no, there wasn't even a primary this time. Right.
But
the throne, you know.
But if the Libertarians, if Mr. Kennedy could have received the nomination for the Libertarians, the cost reduction would have been tremendous on the campaign.
Well, let me ask you this then. What do you make then of this endorsement of Trump? You know, do you think what was the motivation behind that? Do you think it was financial?
Do you know what I want to say?
Yeah.
I love Donald Trump.
Oh, really?
I've known him since Jersey, when my best friend's father negotiated to lease the blimp to Trump for Trump blimp in New York, in Jersey.
Trump had a blimp?
He owns it, yeah. Oh. Well, actually, it was Lou Pearlman who started Boys to Men and NSYNC. Yeah. So my best friend in New Jersey's father was in business with him. And so, I knew of Donald Trump's antics throughout his career.
There's a connection between Donald Trump and Lou Pearlman?
No, well, it was just Lou Pearlman owned a airplane leasing company for rock stars, and then he started NSYNC. But he did have a blimp as part of that leasing company, and he was going to lease the blimp to Trump.
Interesting.
And so that was back in
Lou
the
Pearlman,
80s.
who's in prison right now. I think he died, right? He wound up in prison, for his own shenanigans.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I had already gotten into concert promoting, so I was already working with artists like B.B. King and Emmylou Harris and Guess Who and all of these, dinosaur rock bands and upcoming country artists and blues and jazz artists as an independent presenter. So when you're a presenter, you're the man. You're the one who takes all the risk. So, so being in the campaign and seeing this mismanagement in the campaign, it was just devastating for me. And all I wanted to do was
have. We discussed, but my question on the last one was that you believe that Kennedy's endorsement of Trump is sincere, that he thinks Trump is a capable leader and not out for himself.
I think that was a hard decision, because I always said to every supporter, I want to see Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in office. I didn't care what office. So, how to get into office?
Put him in the post office, right?
No, I'm sorry.
We're just saying, okay,
obviously, Mr. Kennedy has had some problems with his residency. So,
I'm not aware.
You don't know?
No.
Oh, really?
No, I'm not aware, no.
Well, the U.S. Supreme Court had just struck down RFK's Jr. residency claim in New York State.
Oh.
Okay. There was a lawsuit.
He's not on any ballots now. It doesn't really matter, right?
No, he's on ballots. He's going to be on the Oregon ballot.
But he doesn't want to be, does it? Because that takes away votes from Trump.
Well, I don't know Mr. Kennedy. I've never spoken to him except only seen him in meetings. His decision, I think, is based on political power.
Yeah.
You can't change government if you're not in it. And I think he had to come to the realization, it took him a long time to realize that the Democrats were not going to let him in.
How could he be so naive? They didn't even have a primary. How could he be so naive to think that he had a seat in the Democratic Party?
I don't understand it myself.
So then there has to be another motivation.
Well, his motivation was that he thought he could win the presidency.
Really?
Yeah, he thought he could win the presidency when
well, you know what?
Started.
Looking back, just think, because you and me, when Bernie first made that announcement, the first announcement was like a little picnic.
out by the lake.
Right.
I was like, Bernie. Well, that's not a very big showing, but
and
let's
then the
see
next
how
one
it
was
goes.
At the Capitol Hill, and he made his announcement. He says, I gotta go. I gotta vote. So, and nobody thought, my God, just imagine what that man did. God bless him. What a movement they created there,
Oh, he totally created a movement, and RFK was taking the torch from Bernie. Mm. I saw RFK Jr. as a man who was going to not give up, as Bernie had to succumb to his Senate seat placement and how much the DNC and those operatives forced Bernie into a leadership position, but not a true leadership position. Bernie still has many supporters. I think if you saw him at the Democratic Convention this year, he got massive applause. A lot of people in the Democratic Party still love Bernie, but a lot of them are very upset that he caved in when he had the political capital. Right? It's all about political capital. In other words, voters behind you that believe what you have to say, that's the time to use the leverage to get what you want done. So they're not letting Bernie very far.
Well, this is the end of his career anyway, Let me ask you this now, Adam Fishman. Toward the end of the show, you got about another 4 minutes. Is there anything about RFK I haven't asked you want the audience to know about?
Well, I think RFK Jr. is a truth teller, and he is very smart guy who studies the research and to great detail. And he is very knowledgeable about issues. And if he's not, he just doesn't know about them. He doesn't, and he's not really, I think, from my observation of RFK Jr. in this campaign, he's doing the best he can for he and his family right now for getting into the Trump presidency. And that would be very good for our country. And it's a risk, and he's had to have a lot of people very upset with his endorsement of Trump and now campaigning on the trail for Trump. He is truly committed to helping our country. And I think that's what I believe about RFK Jr. Now, the other people in the management, I think many of them were just about lining their pockets. As Kiera Hall said in the Wall Street Journal article, grifters and opportunists. Yeah. They're looking to improve their opportunity, and they were paid way over scale. And then other people that were very hardworking were paid nominally.
It really is a shame, the whole politics has been taken over by this consultancy class, these consultant companies. There's a small campaign that I did so much work for them. I really got them, did a lot of opposition research for them. We did a lot of work for them. And, they wound up just going private, their own private consultancy company, and they're just making a fortune out there right now, just raising money and just consulting with other candidates.
Yeah, that I think is the business
Yeah.
of campaigns state in America. But I truly believed in Robert F. Kennedy Jr. could make a lot of things come to light that had been hidden from the public.
And Adam Fishman right now is going to vote for Donald J. Trump.
As I said, I love Donald Trump and I love Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And I have not decided where my vote is going yet.
Well, but Adam, what about the cats? They're eating the cats, Adam. They're eating the cats. They're eating the dogs. You're going to vote for someone else? We need to vote for the man who's going to stop them from eating our cats and the pets, Adam.
Go watch Mr. McMahon on Netflix.
What is that?
Understand the politics of the big show. Mr. McMahon is the story of Vince McMahon, who created the WrestleMania.
I know who Vince McMahon is. I was guessing maybe it was him, but he did a film.
No, there's a docuseries right now, and Donald Trump is in it. And because I was in arts and entertainment, when you look at the big show, you look and see how these performers communicate with large audiences live. And that is what Donald Trump is also extremely good at. And I admire him for that skill. Many people like Scott Adams and other people have also stated that. Yeah, and so the question is yet to be determined. If Donald Trump wins the presidency, will he now have learned his lesson from 8 years ago? And I think he probably has. That's my hope.
That's kind of terrifying. Okay, I would hope. Yeah. Let's see.
Well, the cats. Kamala Harris was not elected. I talked to my damn people, and they're all behind Kamala, and I'm like, she wasn't even elected. There was no primaries. They completely have shut down the democratic process.
Yeah, I know it. But there wasn't really a Republican primary either, which really, that's really what gets people excited. You know what I mean? Gets people involved, get people volunteering, and that's how you get out the vote. So who knows what's going to happen this time. Mr. Adam Fishman, thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ed. Thanks for letting me expound my stories.
You got it, man. No, very, very enjoyable. Thank you so much. Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.